At my sister's wedding, my mother humiliated me by ordering me to stand with the security guards, declaring I didn't deserve to be part of such a grand event. But when the groom arrived and saw me standing there, his reaction left everyone speechless. In a shocking twist, he canceled the wedding on the spot, demanded I get into the car with him, and sped off. However, just 30 minutes into the drive, an unthinkable revelation turned everything upside down. My name is Sophia Turner, and if you told me my sister's wedding day would change everything, I would have laughed in disbelief. But life has a way of surprising you, doesn't it? Let me take you back to the beginning of this whirlwind, when the invitation arrived. 3 days before the wedding, I found a cream-colored envelope in my mailbox. It was elegant, with my name written in gold calligraphy, but as soon as I opened it, the shock set in. The card didn't list a seat number or a time for the rehearsal dinner like most invitations. Instead, it had one simple instruction: report to the parking lot staff area upon arrival. I read it twice, my stomach sinking. My sister, Lila, had always been the golden child. Everything about her was perfect: her looks, her career, and now her fiancé, Nathan Wells, a tech tycoon who ran one of the biggest companies in the country. Compared to her, I was just me. I worked as a social worker in Seattle, helping struggling families and kids. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. Still, my parents never saw it that way. "Why can't you be more like Lila?" my mother, Margaret, would say, rolling her eyes at my thrift store outfits and my tiny apartment. "She's getting married to Nathan Wells, for heaven's sake. And look at you. What do you have to show for yourselves?" But I loved my work, even if they didn't. I loved seeing the kids I helped find homes, seeing their smiles when they realized someone cared about them. To me, that was more valuable than designer dresses or grand wedding venues. Still, I couldn't help feeling a sting when I saw that invitation. It wasn't an oversight. It was a message, a clear one. Lila didn't think I belonged among her elite crowd. And yet, against my better judgment, I decided to go. She was still my sister, and despite everything, I wanted to support her. The day of the wedding was bright and sunny, the kind of day that made you feel like everything should be perfect. I arrived at the venue, a sprawling mansion-turned-event space, just outside the city. I parked my old, slightly rusted car among the sea of luxury vehicles and made my way to the staff entrance, as instructed. A security guard stopped me, taking one look at my invitation before pointing to a side door. "Staff areas around the back," he said gruffly. I bit my lip, feeling a wave of embarrassment, but I nodded and walked through the narrow hallway that led to the kitchen. The venue staff was buzzing with activity, chefs shouting orders, waiters balancing trays of champagne. I felt completely out of place in my handmade dress, the one I had spent weeks sewing in the evenings after work. It wasn't designer, but it was elegant and crafted with care. Eventually, I was directed to my spot for the ceremony. It wasn't a seat, but rather a corner behind a pillar at the very back of the room. From there, I could see the lavish decorations, the flower arrangements that must have cost a fortune, the glittering chandeliers, the tables set with crystal and gold. Every detail screamed opulence, and every detail made me feel smaller. Then, just before the ceremony began, I spotted Lila. She looked stunning in her custom-made wedding gown, her makeup flawless, her hair styled into an intricate updo. She was glowing, but when her eyes flicked toward me, her smile tightened into something cold. "Glad you could make it," she said as she passed by, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Try not to embarrass me, okay?" I clenched my fists, but said nothing. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing how much her words stung. The ceremony began soon after, and despite everything, I couldn't deny that it was beautiful. The string quartet played softly as Lila walked down the aisle, arm in arm with our father. But my gaze wasn't on her for long. It was on Nathan, standing at the altar in his sharp suit. When his eyes met mine, something changed. He froze for a split second, his expression shifting from calm confidence to shock. Recognition? I couldn't quite place it, but it was enough to make my heart race. Nathan Wells wasn't just Lila's fiancé. He was Nick, the man I had loved 12 years ago. Back then, I was a 19-year-old college student, full of dreams about changing the world. Nick had been 23, a passionate coder who wanted to use technology to make a difference. We'd met at a community event where I was protesting the demolition of a historic neighborhood to make way for new developments. Nick had supported me, not just in words but in action, brainstorming ways to help the community. We'd been inseparable for 6 months. We talked about everything, our dreams, our future, even the idea of starting something together. But then one day, he disappeared without a word. I called, I searched, but it was like he'd vanished into thin air. My mother had told me to forget about him, to focus on my studies, and eventually I did. But I never stopped wondering what had happened. And now, here he was, Nathan Wells, the man who had built a tech empire, standing at the altar with my sister. My heart pounded as I watched him. Did he recognize me? Did he remember what we had? And if he did, why hadn't he reached out? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. This wedding was about to take a turn no one expected. The ceremony ended, and everyone moved toward the reception hall. I lingered in my corner, unsure if I wanted to face the crowd. Seeing Nathan, had thrown me completely off balance. My hands trembled as I adjusted my dress, trying to keep my emotions in check. Eventually, I stepped into the reception area. It was just as extravagant as the ceremony. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, the tables were draped with silk, and servers walked around with trays of champagne flutes. I didn't belong here, and the few glances I caught from other guests confirmed it. I found my place, or rather, the spot Lila had designated for me. It was a small table tucked near the back, far from the head table where Lila, Nathan, and the rest of the wedding party sat. My table was practically hidden behind a large floral arrangement, and the place setting was noticeably different. While every other table had fine china and polished silverware, mine was set with plastic utensils and a handwritten note. "Don't overstep." My chest tightened as I read the note. It was Lila's handwriting. She had gone out of her way to humiliate me. Still, I refused to let her win. I wouldn't cause a scene. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. As I sat there, I couldn't stop my eyes from drifting toward Nathan. He was seated beside Lila, but his focus wasn't on her. He was scanning the room, looking distracted. No, searching for something. For me. It wasn't long before our eyes met again. The moment stretched on, filled with unspoken questions and a wave of memories I wasn't ready to face. Then something unexpected happened. As Nathan raised his glass for a toast, his hand slipped and the wine glass shattered on the floor. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. But Nathan didn't notice the mess. His gaze was locked on me, his expression a mix of shock, regret, and something else I couldn't quite place. Lila leaned over, whispering something to him, but he barely responded. Later, during the dinner, Nathan approached me. My heart raced as he stood by my table, his presence towering over me. "Sophia," he said, his voice low and filled with emotion. "It really is you." I looked up at him, unsure whether to feel anger or relief. "It's me," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "And I see you've moved up in the world, Nick. Or should I call you Nathan now?" He winced at my words, pulling out the chair across from me and sitting down. "I didn't expect to see you here," he admitted. "When I saw your name on the guest list, I thought it had to be a mistake." I couldn't hold back the bitterness in my voice. "Why? Did you think I'd disappeared forever, just like you?" He flinched, running a hand through his hair. "Sophia, you don't understand. I didn't leave you by choice." I narrowed my eyes at him. "Oh, really? Because it sure felt like a choice when you vanished without a word." "I searched for you, Nick. I called, I emailed, I even showed up at places I thought you might be. But you were gone. Like you never existed." Nathan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I didn't know what happened until recently. My father, he made sure we wouldn't be together." I froze, the weight of his words sinking in. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "It's a long story, but the short version is that my father saw you as a threat. Back then, I didn't have the power I do now. I was just a young programmer with dreams, and he had control over everything. He found out about your activism, about the protests you were organizing, and decided you were bad for the company's image. I stared at him, my heart pounding. So what? He told you to leave me, and you just did it. Nathan shook his head.
No.
He didn't tell me anything. He went to your mother? The air seemed to leave the room as his words sank in. My mother? What are you talking about? I asked, my voice shaking. Nathan looked pained. He paid your mother to make sure you stayed out of my life. A lot of money. Enough to convince her to send you away, to transfer you to another school, to tell me you wanted nothing to do with me. I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. That can't be true. My mother wouldn't. But even as I said it, pieces of the past began to click into place. My mother's sudden insistence that I transfer schools. The strange influx of money that paid for Lila's lavish lifestyle and expensive college tuition. The way she always told me Nick wasn't worth my time. I clenched my fists, rage bubbling beneath the surface. You're telling me my own mother sold me out? Nathan nodded. I didn't know until recently. I found the paperwork, payments made from my father's account to your mother. When I confronted him, he admitted it. He said he was protecting me and the company. I shook my head, disbelief and fury warring within me. And you never tried to find me? You just believed him. Nathan's eyes softened. I thought you didn't want me, Sophia. He showed me messages, fake ones. I thought you'd moved on. I wanted to scream, to cry, but instead, I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need answers, Nick. And I'm going to get them, starting with my mother. As I turned to leave, I could feel Nathan's eyes on me, but I didn't stop. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about betrayal from the people who were supposed to love me the most. And I wasn't going to rest until I uncovered the whole truth. I left the reception hall in a haze, my heart pounding and my head spinning. Nathan's revelations had cracked something wide open inside me. My own mother had taken money to erase me from his life. The pieces fit too perfectly for me to deny it any longer, but I still needed to hear it from her. I needed to hear her admit it. I found her near the bar, chatting with a group of well-dressed women, her laughter ringing out like she didn't have a care in the world. My stomach turned. How could she be so carefree after what she'd done? Mom, I called, my voice firm. The women turned to look at me, their eyes scanning me like I didn't belong, but I didn't care. My mother's smile faltered when she saw the look on my face. Sophia, she said with a nervous laugh, stepping toward me. What are you doing? You're causing a scene. Oh, I'm causing a scene? I snapped, my voice rising. Is that what you said when you took money to make sure I disappeared from Nick's life? Her face went pale, and I knew I had hit the mark. The women around us exchanged awkward glances and slowly backed away, sensing this was not a conversation for an audience. Let's talk somewhere private, she said through gritted teeth, grabbing my arm and steering me toward a quieter corner of the room. When we were alone, I yanked my arm free and stared at her. Tell me the truth, Mom. Did you take money from Victor Wells to get rid of me? She sighed, smoothing the fabric of her dress, as if that could somehow shield her from what was coming. Sophia, you don't understand. Don't, I interrupted. Don't tell me I don't understand. Just tell me the truth. Her eyes darted around, as if looking for an escape, but there wasn't one. Fine, she said finally, her voice sharp. Yes, I took the money. But it was for your own good. For my own goods? I repeated, my voice cracking. How is destroying my relationship for my own good? She crossed her arms, her expression hardening. Nick, Nathan, wasn't someone you could build a future with. He came from a world you didn't belong to, Sophia. And his father made it clear that if you stayed in his life, it would ruin both of you. I did what I had to do to protect you. I stared at her, disbelief flooding every part of me. Protect me? You didn't protect me. You sold me out. You set me away and let me think he abandoned me. I gave you a better chance at life, she snapped. You went to a better school, got your degree, and now you have a job that suits you. And Lila, she was destined for this kind of life. The money helped her get where she needed to be. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So it was all about Lila? about making sure she got everything while I was shoved aside. Her silence spoke louder than words. My chest tightened with anger, but also with a deep, aching sadness. I trusted you, I said quietly. You were supposed to look out for me, not sell me off to the highest bidder. I turned and walked away before she could say another word. I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. My hands were trembling as I made my way back to the reception hall, my mind racing. I couldn't stay quiet about this. The truth needed to come out. When I entered the hall, the party was in full swing. Guests were laughing, dancing, and clinking glasses. Lila was at the center of it all, her arm looped through Nathan's, her smile as dazzling as ever. But Nathan's eyes weren't on her. They were on me. I walked straight to the head table, ignoring the stares and whispers as I approached. Lila's smile faltered when she saw me. "Sophia," she said, her voice tight. "What are you doing?" "I need to say something," I said, loud enough for everyone around us to hear. Her eyes narrowed. "This is my wedding. Don't ruin it." "Your wedding was already ruined the moment you built it on lies," I shot back. The room fell silent, the music cutting off as everyone turned to watch. I glanced at Nathan, who nodded subtly, encouraging me to continue. "I know the truth," I said, looking directly at my mother, who had re-entered the room and was now frozen near the door. "I know about the money. I know about how you made sure I was out of Nathan's life. All to protect a business deal." Gasps rippled through the room, but I wasn't finished. I turned to Lila. "And you? Did you know? Did you know that our mother sold me out so you could have your perfect little life?" Lila's face turned red, and she opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Nathan stood then, his voice calm but firm. "She didn't know," he said, addressing the crowd. "But now everyone knows the truth. This wedding is off." Lila let out a strangled cry as the room erupted into chaos. I stood there, feeling both vindicated and utterly drained. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The room was chaos after Nathan's announcement. Guests whispered in shock. Others pulled out their phones to capture the drama, and Lila was frozen, her face a mask of humiliation. My mother, standing near the door, looked like she wanted to disappear. I stood there, feeling the weight of every word I'd just spoken, every truth that had been revealed. Nathan stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "I won't go through with this wedding," he said firmly. "I won't live a lie to satisfy someone else's ambitions. This isn't the life I want." Lila spun toward him, her eyes blazing. "You can't be serious. After everything I've done, everything we've built together, you're going to throw it all away for hers." She pointed at me, her words dripping with disdain. Nathan met her gaze calmly. "What exactly have we built, Lila? A relationship orchestrated by our families? A merger disguised as love?" He shook his head. "No. I'm done being controlled. This is over." Lila's scream echoed through the room, and she lunged for her bouquet, hurling it in our direction. It missed, landing on a champagne tower and sending glasses crashing to the floor. Gasps filled the room as shards of crystal scattered everywhere, but I couldn't help feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. Lila's perfect day was crumbling, just like the lies that had held it together. Nathan turned to me, his voice softer now. "Sophia, can we talk? Somewhere quieter." I hesitated, but finally nodded. "Okay." We stepped outside onto the terrace, the cool evening air a sharp contrast to the heat and tension inside. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The stars above Seattle twinkled, serene and indifferent to the storm we'd just unleashed. Nathan broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "For everything. For not finding you sooner. For believing the lies my father told me. I should have fought harder for us." I looked at him, searching his face for sincerity. "Why didn't you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why didn't you come back?" He ran a hand through his hair, his expression pained. "I thought you didn't want me, Sophia. My father showed me messages, fake ones, I realize now. He said you'd moved on, that you were with someone else. I believed him, because I thought I wasn't good enough for you. I let his words sink in, the years of misunderstanding and pain weighing on both of us. And now, I asked quietly, what do you want now, Nathan? He took a deep breath, his gaze steady. I want to make things right. I want to build something real, not just with you, but for the people who've been hurt by the kind of greed and manipulation my father stood for. I've taken control of the company, Sophia. As of last week, I'm the majority shareholder. I blinked in surprise. You mean? He nodded. Yes. My father signed over his shares as an early wedding gift. Ironic, isn't it? He thought he was securing his legacy, but I plan to take the company in a completely different direction. His words sent a spark of hope through me, but I couldn't ignore the past so easily. And what about us? I asked. Do you expect me to just forget everything that's happened? Nathan stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. No, I don't expect that. But I'm asking for a chance to prove to you that I've changed. That I'm not the man who let you down all those years ago. I hesitated, my heart battling my head. Part of me wanted to walk away, to protect myself from being hurt again. But another part of me, the part that had never stopped loving him, wanted to believe he was telling the truth. Okay, I said finally, but it's going to take time. A lot of time. His face broke into a small, hopeful smile. I can wait. We returned to the reception hall together, where the chaos had started to settle. Lila and my mother were nowhere to be seen, likely too embarrassed to face the fallout. Guests whispered as we walked in, but I didn't care anymore. For the first time in years, I felt free. Nathan took the microphone and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice steady, tonight has taken an unexpected turn, but it's also the beginning of something new. As my first act as CEO of Wells Tech, I'm proud to announce the launch of the Turner Wells Foundation, a program dedicated to supporting underserved communities and creating opportunities for those who need it most. Gasps rippled through the audience, followed by scattered applause. Nathan turned to me, his eyes soft. And I couldn't think of anyone better to lead it than Sophia Turner. Tears filled my eyes as I realized the enormity of what he was offering. Not just the job, but a chance to turn all the pain into something meaningful. I nodded, unable to speak, and the applause grew louder. In the weeks that followed, the foundation became a reality. We funded programs for education, housing, and community development, finally living up to the ideals we'd once dreamed of together. Lila married someone else, a minor celebrity who loved the spotlight as much as she did, and my mother, ostracized from our lives, eventually moved away. As for me and Nathan, we took things slow, rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. On quiet evenings, we'd sit on the terrace, talking about the future. And one day, when he slipped a simple gold band onto my finger, I knew I had finally come home. Sometimes, justice isn't about revenge, it's about rebuilding. And for us, that was the greatest triumph of all.